so much. It's an absolute privilege to work with these guys, and they have worked incredibly hard. As Becky said, I do have kind of a hard standard, and sometimes they were looking at me like, really, lady, really? But they did it with a smile and absolutely did everything I asked to do. So for that, I thank you guys. That first selection was entitled Prelude in B flat, Prelude and Fugue in B flat major, and it is by based on a theme from the Well-Tempered Clavier by Johann Sebastian Bach. That arrangement was actually written in 1955, but the original source material goes all the way back to 1720. So when people say, oh, band stuff is all relatively new, that's not necessarily true. So they are playing things that are, you know, close to 300 years old, which I think is really, really important. The next selection is entitled Simple Song. And I mentioned this to them not necessarily as a challenge, but something as adults a lot of us can relate to. You realize sometimes when you're talking with your friends and they dare you to do something, sometimes that doesn't always work out to be the best decision that you've ever made in your entire life. But with this particular selection, Ralph Hultgren is an Australian composer, and he had a very, very good friend of his that works with him at the Department of Education in Queensland, and said, well, why aren't there more slow songs in 3/4 time? And that's the kind of challenge that he was given. He said, I don't know. How about I write one? So he did, and this piece took him about 15 minutes to compose, which when you listen to it, it's actually quite sophisticated and one of those things that if it's played by adults, they can make it very, very musical. A lot of people that I talk to about performing this, they say, are you sure you want to do something that's expressive and lyrical with middle school students? I mean, it requires a lot of maturity and like musicianship. They got to pay attention. And I said, yeah, they can do this. They totally can. Well, why don't they? I said, because we don't ask them to. And that's the truth. And these guys have absolutely risen to the challenge. So this is Ralph Hultgren's Simple Song. to give percussion a chance to move around and do what they need to do. See, my best friend is a percussionist, and he really lectures me a lot if I don't allow people to do that, if I want to start a piece before they've had a chance to move around everything that they're doing. I want to talk very briefly about this next piece before we do it. As I told the students, there was a point in time where something like Prelude and Fugue in B-flat major would have been considered very strange sounding, very avant-garde, and very, kind of, what is this? What is it that we're listening to? It doesn't sound odd to us now, but there was a time where it would have. Whirlwind is something that probably in the future, it won't sound so interesting, but this has certainly been something to stretch their understanding of what music is supposed to be just a little bit. The neat thing about this selection, which is by Australian composer Jody Blackshaw, is that it's a creation piece, which basically means it doesn't matter what ensemble performs it, it's going to sound completely different almost every single time that you do it. The reason for that is the way that it's written, there's a solo section that could be done by anybody in the ensemble. It's written as a unison, meant to be performed as a solo, and so really, truly, any two performances, it's not necessarily going to be the same soloist, and it's not going to sound the same at all. It also calls for some interesting percussion, which I won't spoil it for you, I'll let them play it for you in a moment. You are going to see students who are blowing on glass bottles and empty plastic bottles. They're not being rude, I told them to do that. They also, some of them have something in their part that says homemade rattle, and I've been very entertained by the things that they come up with. Somebody back there had a milk jug that was filled with like nails or something. I have no idea what was going on back there. And then of course, one of our low brass players just straight up raided his kitchen pantry and had like a box of rice and was just shaking around back there. And you know what, that's totally allowed. There are 5 soloists in this piece, and we'll acknowledge them at the end, but I did want to point out who they are. We have Rachel Johnson on clarinet, Spencer Hale on trumpet, Kaylin Stiff on alto sax, Evan Newcorn on trombone, and Santino Licamelli on clarinet, and this is Jody Blackshaw's Whirlwind. I did warn them that the silence after that one was probably going to go on for an awkwardly long amount of time because the audience doesn't quite know for Jen, so good job, you backed me up. Thank you. I'm going to give a lot of time for percussion for this last piece. Allow me to just kind of talk a little bit about the state of education right now and how that relates to what we're doing. You will hear a lot of education talk right now, and they're talking about STEM education and STEAM education. For the uninitiated, that stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. Or if it is STEAM, it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, which, let's be honest, that's what it truly should be. The idea of STEM education, and I come from a district that is very STEM focused right now, it is performance-based, it's focusing on long-term projects rather than shorter length projects and that sort of thing. There truly are fewer, more pure forms of this particular type of learning than music education, specifically performing arts, but really a lot of what we are doing right now. With the big difference is that this form that we're doing right here, this is one of the very few things that does not require a screen for them to interact with each other. And that's something that I think you'll agree a lot of our children need a lot of. So thank you so much for supporting the arts and supporting these children on stage, because this is truly what STEM education looks like, even if it's not always in the acronym. So thank you so much for supporting me. And on personal note, thank you so much for a lot of these directors, well, all of these directors, but a lot of them of whom are my friends. Thank you for inviting me out to do this. This is always very, very fun for me to do honor bands and that sort of thing. Special thanks to Becky Fanning. I'm not real sure where she is. She's hiding in the back somewhere. And thank you to parents, because as Becky said earlier, they can't do this without you, literally, because they don't drive. So thank you for supporting music education. Thank you for buying that first instrument and suffering through those first sounds. I know, but it's totally worth it when you see what they can accomplish long term. So, with that being said, we're going to end our concert this afternoon with Randall Standridge's Adrenaline Engines. Just hang on, it's going to be fun. Thank you so much.
standing backstage listening, I had two things I need to say. One, this never would happen back in the percussion section without that man you see back there. Jim McKee, stop what you're doing. Jim McKee, stop what you're doing. I need a round of applause for him. Thank you, Jim. Also, they just learned how to do that. Also, we have several of these students that have been in Metro 8 Middle School Honor Band for 2 years in a row, so I'd like to just briefly recognize those students. Would you please stand if this is your second year participating with us?